okay, we got, and we're not going to go too much in depth, but it's just basic, life. When you hear, hey, we got DNA that Melly was in the car, I'm going to put it out there. Now, you don't see the defense coming to defend it because their job is to make sure Melly's defended in trial, make sure their client come home, which they're going to do. Melly have the best defensive team. He got 3 of the best lawyers. He built a real great solid team away from just being.
Do you know who tossed a weapon into the canal? That's what the investigator kept asking in this wild deposition. He pressed again. Did you throw it? Then came another shocker. Apparently, someone told police that Cortland Henry, better known as Track, was out in the field searching for that same weapon the next day. What's going on here? The investigator didn't stop there. He asked, why would Jamal Demons, known as YNW Melly, know where the gun was if he wasn't even at the scene during the time of the shootings? And then came another curveball. Why was a storage unit rented the very next day after the murders? That's suspicious timing. To make it even stranger, someone was reportedly hired to paint something right after that day. What needed to be painted so quickly? In the newly released deposition, Melly's manager Hunter K. Track Francois refused to answer most of the questions, but documents show that police had already interviewed him before, and during that time, he allegedly admitted going to a field to retrieve a weapon right after the incident. And bank statements, they show he purchased a storage unit the very next day. The deposition also dives into Track's background. He jumped into the rap game at just 16, worked with Kodak Black at 17, helped create the Sniper Gang merch, and later found YNW Melly through Instagram. He even opened a grill shop trying to sell jewelry-style grills to rappers. Now, the crazy part, lawyers say they're going to start showing videos because Track's done a lot of interviews over the years. This whole thing is about to get even messier. Track was out here doing interviews like it was a press run while his artist was literally fighting for his life in court. What kind of move is that? The deposition shows he sat down and answered questions on camera, almost like it was a regular podcast session. When asked if the Melly account was branded under YNW back then, Track said, "I don't think so. It was just Melly." He explained that the YNW name came later, as Melly grew and wanted something that would make him stand out more. Track said, "At first, if you searched Melly, everything else popped up, so YNW Melly became his own thing." Then the lawyers brought up one of Melly's most famous interviews with Adam 22 on No Jumper. They even asked Track if he had access to Melly's social media early on. Track replied that Melly's mom usually had the phone, but sometimes he'd help post things for her. Sounds like a lot of people were managing one account. At one point, lawyer John Phillips awkwardly said he wouldn't repeat certain words written in the transcripts because they could be seen as offensive, adding that he was in a weird spot culturally. The room got tense. Track even joked, "I'm offended right now, John. I'm done with the Zoom, but nah, I'm playing, go ahead." That moment showed just how uncomfortable and chaotic the questioning was getting. Finally, they asked Track about the origins of Young N-World. He said it wasn't something he came up with. It was already there from when Melly, Jay Green, Sack Chaser, and Juvie were hanging out back in Gifford as teens. Track said he couldn't speak on all the details because he didn't really know that part of the story, but clearly the roots of YNW go way back before fame. So now the questioning shifts again. This time they bring up Vlad TV, calling it just another outlet like No Jumper. The lawyer asks if Jamal Demons, better known as YNW Melly, and his crew members Cortland Henry and Sack Chaser called Track on June 30th, 2018 when they got pulled over. Track instantly invoked his Fifth Amendment right. He didn't want to say anything. The lawyer tried to clarify, "I'm not talking about the murders. I'm talking about June 30th. But Track stood firm. "I'm still not talking." Things got tense. Then they brought up Mariah Hamilton, Melly's ex-girlfriend, saying that according to the police report, she was with Melly, Withers Williams, and Henry that day. When asked if that refreshed his memory, Track again refused to answer. Next, the questioning got real specific. They asked about a Gucci bag Melly supposedly had with him the night everything went down. The lawyer kept pressing. "Are you familiar with that Gucci bag? Do you know what he usually kept in it? Did you ever have it in your possession?" Track didn't budge. The attorney was clearly trying to suggest that the same bag Melly had that night might have been the same one seen before in other incidents where weapons were found. They even brought up a red backpack, saying it allegedly contained several items, including accessories linked to firearms. The lawyer asked over and over, "Do you know what was inside the bag? Did you buy any of those items for him? Did anyone else?" Track stayed silent, constantly asserting his right right not to answer. The tension in the deposition was unreal. Every time the lawyer pushed for details about weapons, bags, or purchases, Track shut it down immediately. This back and forth revealed how deep the investigators are digging, trying to connect every small detail to that night. The lawyer kept digging into the money side of things next, and it got wild. They asked if the same bag also had $10,000 in cash inside. When Track was questioned on how Melly usually got paid, he said the label, 300 Entertainment, would wire the money, and then he would handle distributing it to Melly. Basically, the money hit the manager's account first and then got sent out from there. Sounds risky, right? Track explained that as a manager, that's how it usually works. The label sends funds to the manager, who then disperses it to the artist. But even the interviewer couldn't ignore how shady that can get. They said there are tons of managers out there who skim from their artists without them even noticing. If all the money goes into one person's account and the artist just trusts them blindly, that's a perfect setup for trouble. Artists really got to check their financial records. When asked what his commission was in 2018, Track said 15%. The lawyer admitted that's actually pretty fair since most managers take between 10% and 20%. But then they mentioned some other cases where managers were taking half their artist's money, 50%. That's robbery level management right there. Then came the question about Melly's record deal advance. The lawyer asked, was it $400,000? Track said, I wouldn't know, John. That response left everyone confused. How do you not know the number when you're supposed to be taking a 15% cut of it? The lawyer pushed back, saying, even if it was years ago, you'd remember a chunk of money that big. They also questioned Track about large amounts of cash, like bundles of $100 bills Melly was once caught with. The lawyer asked if he ever got that money back, or even the item seized during the same time. And finally, he asked one last thing. Is Jamel Demon's YNW Melly still your client today? The silence after that said it all. When the lawyer asked if he's still managing YNW Melly, Track said, I'd have to talk to my counsel about that. Then confirmed he was invoking his right to stay silent until speaking with his lawyer. He wouldn't even say if he's technically still Melly's manager. That's strange. They then asked if Melly had any ownership in Remain Solid, which appears to be 100K Track's own management company. Track refused to answer again. The lawyer pressed, does Jamie King have ownership? Does Cortland Henry? But all he got was more silence. So now it's unclear whether any of Melly's team had a real share in that company. Things got more confusing when they clarified that Remain Solid is actually Track's record label. The question switched to what services he provided to his artists, and once again, he wouldn't answer. That's when the lawyer hit him with a tough one. Why are you more willing to talk to podcasters than the lawyers? Ouch. They were clearly calling him out for doing interviews instead of cooperating under oath. Then came questions about Sack Chaser. They asked if he was authentic, had a strong work ethic, or real drive. Track still refused to answer even basic personal questions about him. It's like he didn't want to touch anything involving Melly's old crew. The lawyer moved on to ownership rights, asking who really owns the YNW logo and name. Track said he didn't know and asserted his rights again. They even asked if he or anyone else bought ownership shares of YNW, but he stayed silent there too. Here's where it gets really suspicious. The state believes that Sack Chaser and Juvie may have had a verbal agreement with Melly about owning part of YNW, but when the official paperwork was filed, their names allegedly weren't included. That's where this whole ownership dispute theory comes in. Some people believe that behind the scenes, money and credit got mixed up and the paperwork ended up cutting certain people out. The questioning kept getting more personal, and Track started to lose his patience. They brought up a name, Cortez Cash-Motivated Ash, someone who was reportedly part of Melly's early circle. When asked if he remembered who that was, Track flat out said, no. The lawyer then pushed further, asking if he was aware that Cortez and Jamie King, someone close to Melly, were involved romantically. Track denied even knowing who Cortez was. The lawyer then revealed something interesting. Documents show that Rashad Ash, Cortez's real name, filed for an LLC under YNW back in March 2018. When asked if Track knew about it, he said no. They followed up by asking if he knew who the officers or founders listed under that company were. Again, he said no. They also asked why Melly was seen wearing a cash-motivated chain around that same time. Track claimed he wasn't sure, saying Melly had a lot of different jewelry. But fans remember that infamous no-jumper interview where Melly was asked about the cash-motivated piece and looked visibly uncomfortable, replying, "I don't want to talk about it." Not long after that, the chain disappeared and people started speculating. From what's been gathered, Melly and Cortez Ashe reportedly had a falling out, possibly connected to some behind-the-scenes drama. Around the same time, Melly flew out to Los Angeles for meetings with major labels like Atlantic Records and APG, even though he was already signed with 300 Entertainment. When asked if Track helped Melly or Jamie King with the YNW trademark paperwork, he said no. He claimed he had no knowledge of who actually filed for ownership. The lawyer kept pressing about Cortez, but Track was done. He said, "I don't know that guy, and if you ask me 1,000 times, I'll say the same thing 1,000 times." Toward the end, Track added that Cortez once told him he was involved with Jamie King and that this situation reportedly caused tension within Melly's camp. That might explain why Melly stopped wearing the cash-motivated chain and started distancing himself from that crew. The energy between them had clearly turned sour. The deposition kept heating up, and now the lawyer brought up an old video clip where Track said, "Fam, I'm YNW." The attorney asked him directly, "Why did you say that?" Track replied, "You'd have to play the whole clip, sir. I don't understand the context from that snippet." Then the lawyer asked why Jay Green supposedly wasn't allowed to speak on YNW, and Track explained, because he wasn't part of it anymore. He wasn't friends with the people running things, so why talk about something you're not involved in? The tone was sharp. It was clear he was losing patience. Then things got even more layered. The lawyer asked if Sack, Chaser, and Juvie were still alive at the time this clip was filmed. Track didn't answer directly, just asserted his rights again. The questioning moved to a more controversial topic, lawyer payments. In one clip, Track referenced paying lawyers, and the attorney asked, "Whose lawyers were you paying?" Track confirmed Jamal Demon's, YNW Melly's attorneys. But when asked if he paid for anyone else's, he went silent again. The lawyer started listing names: Adrian Davis, DeAntavis Withers, Mariah Hamilton, Felicia Holmes, Cortland Henry, Frederick Griffins. Each time, Track refused to confirm or deny anything. The lawyer was clearly trying to prove that someone might have been paying legal fees for multiple people tied to the case, and Track wasn't giving them anything. Then came business questions. Does 100K Management own an armored vehicle? Track stayed quiet. Who runs the Free Melly merch and website? Do you operate freeynw.com? Again, no clear answer. They even asked if he was employed under Young New Wave Apparel and what that company really was. Track only said enough to confirm he worked with Melly's brand, but wouldn't say who owned what. The most serious question hit near the end. Do the families of the victims, like Christopher Thomas Jr., Juvie, or Anthony Williams, Sack Chaser, receive any money from the merch sales? Track wouldn't answer that either. By this point, you could feel his frustration boiling over. He finally snapped, saying, "It's not about the case," trying to shut the whole conversation down. But the lawyers clearly thought otherwise, and the tension in that room was unreal. Track snapped back, saying, "This isn't even about the case. I'm just getting messages from work." The room got tense as the lawyer tried to keep things on track. Attorney John Phillips pushed forward, explaining why the questions mattered. He said the use of YNW trademarks, funds, and merch sales could tie directly into what happened around the time of the tragic deaths of Christopher Thomas Jr., Juvie, and Anthony Williams, Sack Chaser. Phillips stated that money from YNW-related sales may have gone into Hunter K. Track's management accounts, which could be part of what they called a civil conspiracy claim, basically suggesting there might have been hidden transactions or shady financial handling after the incident. He said, "We're allowed to ask these questions about the merch company because it could show how funds were moved or controlled." That's a serious claim. The lawyer then asked directly if the proceeds from YNW apparel were deposited into 100K Management's account. Track didn't give a straight answer. When Phillips brought up that Mr. Williams, Sack Chaser, was reportedly listed as CEO of YNW at the time, Track laughed. Phillips shot back, "What's funny about that?" Track replied, "You went from one question to something else. I didn't even answer the first one." The back and forth felt more like a heated argument than a deposition. Phillips kept pressing, asking if Mr. Thomas Juvie had also been listed as CEO during that time. Again, Track invoked his right not to answer. Then came the record label confusion. Phillips brought up the meetings Melly had in Los Angeles with Atlantic Records and APG. According to reports, Melly was already signed to 300 Entertainment in New York, but still flew out to LA to work with Atlantic. The label allegedly paid for studio time, flights, and resources, thinking he was an unsigned artist. In the end, it seems that entire trip caused some serious label drama. Atlantic reportedly realized Melly was already under contract with 300, meaning he couldn't even keep the music he recorded in those sessions. It was a mess that showed just how tangled Melly's business situation really was. Multiple labels, multiple managers, and way too many secrets. The questioning took another wild turn. The lawyer asked if YNW Melly met with any known gang members while in Los Angeles. Track said yes, but only for work, explaining that every meeting or video shoot Melly did in LA was business related, not personal. Then, an uncomfortable rumor came up, something Adam 22 once mentioned about an alleged incident at a record label office. The lawyer asked if it was true, and Track shut it down instantly. I have no idea what Adam's talking about. If that happened, it had nothing to do with me. When asked if it would have embarrassed the YNW brand, he said he didn't recall any such situation. The focus then shifted to payments made to one of the victims' families. The attorney claimed Track once said that the record label, not him, handled the payments, but now they wanted details. How much was paid, who approved it, and why. Track refused to answer most of it, and at one point, the lawyer even suggested that Track called him personally to drop a case because payments were being made to the victim's family. He then asked straight up, "Are you aware you're being investigated for witness tampering?" Track immediately asserted his right not to respond. They even mentioned Kevin Liles, the CEO of 300 Entertainment, asking if he approved those payments. The implication? That the label might have stepped in financially after the tragedy to ease tensions or settle matters quietly. The questioning wrapped with talk about Melly telling a family, "My lawyer and label told me not to speak, but I'm taking care of everything. You'll be good for life." Lawyers pressed Track. What did Melly mean by that? Did he or 100K management actually do anything to make things right? By the end, Track was visibly frustrated, dodging more financial questions and mumbling that he needed food. The tension was thick, and the unanswered questions made it all sound even more suspicious. The questioning got even more intense. Lawyers asked Hunter 100K Track Francois why he made payments to Jamie King, Melly's mom. Track said any money sent to her was for Melly's benefit, not personal. Then came a tricky topic, his decision to hand over a phone to prosecutors early in the case. Some people online called that snitching, and Track had even spoken about it in interviews, saying he didn't see it that way. When asked if Jamie King ever accused him of cooperating with prosecutors, he said no. The lawyer pushed harder, asking if he had Melly's phone at the time of the shooting, or if he ever handled any weapons linked to the case. Track immediately invoked his right not to answer. The attorney kept firing off questions about money, weapons, and evidence. Did you pay the victims' families? Did you help recover or hide a weapon? Track stayed silent every time. He refused to confirm or deny anything. Then the lawyer brought up a clip where Track said there was no evidence against Melly. The attorney called it unbelievable, asking why he'd make that claim publicly while refusing to testify in court. Track laughed, and the lawyer snapped back, "It's not funny." The most shocking part came when they quoted one of Track's earlier police statements from May 2019, where he allegedly said, "I don't see Melly as a killer. If he could do that to Sack and Juvie, then he could do that to me or my wife. But I just don't believe that's who he is." That single quote summed up how divided the people closest to Melly really are, caught between loyalty, fear, and disbelief. This whole deposition paints a picture of someone who knows a lot, but refuses to say anything. The lawyer pressed Track about a past police statement where he supposedly said, "If Melly could hurt Sack and Juvie, then he could hurt me and my wife." They asked if he was afraid for his safety. Track refused to answer. They even questioned whether Melly had ever threatened him or his wife. Again, silence. When asked if Juvie, who Track once called like a little brother, deserved justice, he still invoked his rights. That moment stunned everyone. He wouldn't even speak on justice for a close friend. Then the questioning moved to money. The lawyer asked if Sack Chaser was owed $200,000 by Melly. Track wouldn't confirm, but investigators believe there was talk about a deal where Melly planned to sign Sack and Juvie under 100K management or Remain Solid Records. The theory suggested that a dispute over money might have fueled tension in the crew, but many find that hard to believe, considering Melly was already set to make millions at that point. Killing friends over business money just didn't make sense. Finally, they brought up the field incident, the trip where Track allegedly helped recover a weapon after the murders. The lawyer asked who came up with the idea, who drove, and if he knew the weapon was linked to a double homicide. Each time, Track asserted his right to remain silent. Every answer he refused only made things sound more suspicious, leaving people wondering what really happened that night and what secrets Track might still be keeping. The questioning turned straight to the night after the murders, and it got dark fast. The lawyer asked who found the weapon in the field and how many people went back there the next morning. Investigators said multiple phones pinged at the same location where they believed the weapon was dumped. They pressed Track. Did you see anyone throw a weapon into the canal? Did you throw it? He refused to answer. The attorney brought up statements saying someone allegedly handled a bloody firearm, but Track kept invoking his right to remain silent. Then came a string of tense questions. Who put the weapon in the car? Who took it out? Why didn't they hand it to police? And where it is now? No answers, just more silence. The lawyer even joked mid-deposition, breaking the tension by pointing out someone named Raina, trying to lighten the mood, but Track wasn't playing along. They then asked what he was doing helping Jamie King that same day, and if she had any role in what happened. Track immediately shut it down with another assertion. Finally, the lawyer confronted him with a shocking claim that Track told police Cortland Henry went to the field looking for the weapon, and that Melly somehow knew where it was, even though he supposedly wasn't at the scene. That led to the biggest question yet. Why would anyone dispose of the gun if they weren't involved? Track didn't respond. The silence in that room said more than words ever could, and the mystery around that missing weapon only got deeper. The questioning hit a boiling point. The lawyer asked if Track had told police that people went back to the field looking for a weapon, and some started wondering if that was snitching. Track refused to clarify. Then came the vehicle questions. Did he rent the Jeep used the night of the murders? Was he aware of the front-end damage that reportedly came from swerving off the road and hitting barrels? Investigators claim that's when the shooting took place. That small detail shocked everyone. It was the first time most people had even heard about barrels being damaged near the scene. The lawyer asked if Track had gone on multiple podcasts discussing the case. Track stayed quiet again, even as they asked about the .40 caliber shell casing found inside his rental vehicle. Who fired it? Who picked it up? Did you help remove them? Every question met with silence. Next, they brought up something emotional. Sack Chaser's fear before the murders. The lawyer said Sack called his mom just days before, saying he was scared and wanted to move away. They asked if Track, as Melly's manager, ever offered protection or reported the threats. He didn't answer. Finally, they threw in street rumors, claims that Juvie was hurt because he refused to leave Sack's side, and that there was talk about relationship drama involving Melly's girlfriend. Track denied ever hearing any of it. At this point, the deposition was pure chaos. Questions about guns, fear, loyalty, and money all swirling together, with Track refusing to confirm a single thing. The silence around these answers made the mystery feel even darker. The questioning got even messier. The lawyer asked if Track knew about personal rumors involving Juvie, Sack Chaser, or Mariah Hamilton, but he denied everything, said he'd never heard of any of it. Then they showed him a photo of a weapon, asking if it looked like the one found in the field after the murders. Track refused to answer. The attorney followed up, claiming that Melly had already earned around $750,000 from his deals by that time, and asked if he and Melly had any plan to profit from what happened. Track immediately invoked his rights again. The big reveal came next. They said Track admitted to being at the field after the murders, even though he denied touching the weapon himself. The lawyer pointed out that his statements basically confirmed he was there when it was found, which raised even more suspicion. They pressed further. Was his home searched? Did police find a storage unit key? And yes, apparently investigators did search a storage unit afterward. They claimed items had been moved out of the YNW house right after the murders, and a storage shed was rented that same day. The lawyer asked, why would anyone rent a storage unit right after something like that happened? And even the courtroom reacted. It sounded bad. Finally, they mentioned a woman named Ajaz Hassan Ali, connected to something labeled as paint jobs. The lawyer asked what exactly needed to be painted the day after those murders. No answers, just more silence. Every new detail made the situation sound more suspicious than before. The lawyer wasn't holding back anymore. He pointed out that right after the murders, a storage unit was rented, cash was withdrawn, and something was painted, all within 24 hours. He called those details major red flags. They questioned why Melly's phone went missing if he supposedly wasn't even at the scene, and why his manager needed a storage shed that same day. The timing looked bad, like something was being hidden. Then came the most explosive part, the autopsy evidence. The lawyer asked if Track really believed a magic bullet somehow curved inside the car, since the angles of the shots didn't match a drive-by. Investigators said the gunfire came from inside the vehicle, not outside. He asked directly, were you involved in shooting Mr. Thomas or Mr. Williams? Track refused to answer. When asked about the gunpowder found on Mr. Thomas's cheek, the lawyer explained it suggested the shot was fired from only about 8 inches away, meaning the shooter was right next to him. Then they showed a photo of Juvie's hand, explaining how he likely put his hands up to shield himself from a close-range shot. The courtroom went silent. Everything in that moment painted a chilling picture. The shots came from inside the car, the story about a drive-by didn't match, and the people who could clear it up were all refusing to speak. The tension was unreal, and every unanswered question made the truth look even darker. The lawyer continued grilling Track with photos and evidence, showing how the car's damage and blood patterns didn't match a typical drive-by. Investigators believe the shots came from inside the vehicle, not outside. When asked if he knew how the car got hit on the passenger side, Track said, "No, I do not." They showed him photos suggesting someone was sitting in the back left seat when the shots were fired. Track looked uneasy but stayed silent. The lawyer then pointed out that Melly tried calling his mom around 3:40 a.m. just after the time of the murders and asked if Track knew what those calls were about. He didn't answer. Messages were also mentioned, texts between Melly, Sack Chaser, and others. Investigators said Sack had been asking Melly for small amounts of money before the murders because he was struggling financially. Track said he had no idea about those messages. Then the lawyer brought up disturbing rumors about conflicts between the crew, but Track firmly denied hearing anything like that. When asked if he knew Melly had gotten rid of his phone that same night, he once again said, "No, I don't know." The courtroom felt heavy. The timeline, texts, and physical evidence all seemed to tell a story that no one wanted to say out loud. But Track's silence spoke volumes, and it left everyone wondering what he really knew about that night, and who was truly inside that car when it all went down. The final moments of the deposition were tense. The lawyer accused Mariah Hamilton and her mother of trying to get $40,000 in a car from Melly's team, calling it an extortion attempt. Track denied knowing anything about that, but then the lawyer revealed text messages allegedly showing Mariah's mom saying they did receive the money and the car. The room went silent. This was a bombshell claim. Then came another twist. The lawyer read out a message from Ms. Holmes dated March 1st, 2021, where she said she was ready to testify about what Melly supposedly told her at a friend's house, hinting she had inside knowledge of that night. Track said he wasn't aware of those messages either. Things got serious when the lawyer reminded Track that his silence, every time he pled the fifth, could be shown to a jury in a civil case, and that they'd be asking for millions in damages. Track simply said he'd need to speak with his attorney. The lawyer pushed back, warning that if the court rules against him, they could go after his assets, his income, cars, or property to satisfy the judgment. Track kept asserting his rights and refused to answer. The deposition ended in total chaos, accusations of hush money, new testimony threats, and the looming possibility of a massive civil lawsuit. And that wraps it up. What do you think about all these wild revelations and unanswered questions? Drop your thoughts below, hit subscribe, like, share, and comment, because this story is far from over and you don't want to miss what comes next.